In this video, we'll explore the story of Darius becoming king, quelling the rebellions that arose early in his reign, some of his accomplishments, and then the wars with Ionia toward the end of his reign, and then finally his death after ruling Persia for around 35 years. Darius comes to power. Cambyses died on his way back from Egypt in the year 522 BC, and the man who would soon have the throne for a very long time, Darius, he hadn't chosen. Darius would have been around 30 years old when Cambyses died. As for who chose Darius, he tells us the Zoroastrian creator deity Ahura Mazda put him in power. Darius claims to have been of the same extended family as Cyrus and Cambyses, and that's often accepted as at least partially true. Darius tells us these things about his lineage and his ascension to the throne in the Bisitun Inscription, found on a rock face on a cliff at Mount Bisitun of the Zagros Mountains. Alongside the road from Babylon to Ecbatana, some 300 feet above the road, there was an inscription in 3 languages: Elamite, Babylonian, and thirdly, there's Old Persian, with this being the earliest instance of written Old Persian. Before telling us of his lineage, Darius is introduced with titles already differentiating him from the prior kings. Instead of the King of Anshan honorific, used by both Cyrus and Cambyses, a title seemingly of the pre-Persian Elamite tradition of kingship, over here the king introduces himself with, quote, "I am Darius, the great king, king of kings, the king of Persia, the king of countries, the son of Hystaspes, the grandson of Arsames, the Achaemenid," unquote. Darius continues by diving deeper into his lineage, and he mentions 2 important names never mentioned by Cyrus or Cambyses. And the first isn't one of his ancestors, but it's the name of the god Ahura Mazda. And the second he already referenced, namely the name Achaemenes, from where the term Achaemenid in Achaemenid Empire arises. Ahura Mazda, for his part, played the central role in the bringing about of Darius's kingship and would continue to be significant to the later Persian kings. In this section of the inscription, the main point is Darius's professed royal ancestry through his ancestors Thyspes and Achaemenes, who were allegedly Cyrus's great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather respectively. Here's how the inscription continues. King Darius says, "My father is Hystaspes. The father of Hystaspes was Arsames. The father of Arsames was Ariaramnes. The father of Ariaramnes was Thyspes. The father of Thyspes was Achaemenes." King Darius says, "That is why we are called Achaemenids. From antiquity we have been noble. From antiquity has our dynasty been royal. King Darius says, 8 of my dynasty were kings before me. I am the 9th. 9 in succession we have been kings." So he establishes his royal lineage. Interestingly, his father, Hystaspes, served militarily under Cambyses, leading troops in eastern Iran, and Hystaspes would continue to serve under his son, Darius. Darius would further strengthen his dynastic ties with marriages to daughters of both Cyrus and Smerdis, or Bardia, who we'll meet soon, among his more than 5 wives. Let's continue. King Darius says, "By the grace of Ahura Mazda am I king. Ahura Mazda has granted me the kingdom." You may remember how Cyrus fronted as a non-enemy of local religion, such as by the Babylonians under Nabonidus when he claimed in the famed Cyrus cylinder that Marduk chose him, and exiles of Judah as recorded in the Bible are definitely walking around under the impression that their god chose Cyrus, and perhaps Cyrus himself had something to do with that. But regardless if it went that far, he definitely had to do with the exiled Judeans being able to return and start considering the reestablishing of their traditional temple. And Cambyses followed in this way, even in his traditionally maligned conquest of Egypt, where he worshipped the Apis bull and represented himself as the child of traditional Egyptian gods in his kingly title. Darius too acted in this way tolerating local religion, and even presenting himself as a protector of religion on a Greek island when he eventually sent forces across the Aegean to Eretria and Athens. Darius is further responsible for continuing in Cyrus's lead and easing the path for the building of the temple by the Judeans. So while Cyrus and Cambyses often tolerated or even acknowledged the deities of others, they leave us no mention of their own chief deity. By Darius, it's clear Ahura Mazda is the god who gains the bulk of his attention, and who's seen as most responsible for Darius finding himself in the kingship to begin with. Darius then lists 23 lands that are subject to him and talks briefly about his rule there, and some more mention of Ahura Mazda is then made. It's the next part that is our main concern here, as we consider the question of Darius's rise to power. Here's the situation as Darius would have us believe it, as he describes chaos that ensued after the end of the reign of Cambyses. King Darius says, "The following is what was done by me after I became king. A son of Cyrus named Cambyses, one of our dynasty, was king here before me. That Cambyses had a brother, Smerdis by name, of the same mother and the same father as Cambyses. Afterwards, Cambyses slew this Smerdis. When Cambyses slew Smerdis, it was not known unto the people that Smerdis was slain. Thereupon Cambyses went to Egypt. When Cambyses had departed into Egypt, the people became hostile, and the lie multiplied in the land, even in Persia and Media and in the other provinces." Okay, before moving on, Darius mentioned a number of important things there. He said that Cambyses, before going to Egypt, had killed his brother Smerdis in relative secrecy. Then, with Cambyses away in Egypt, groans of instability began. In the next section, Darius gets to the meat of it all. He describes a magi who pretends to be Smerdis, Cambyses' younger brother, and who takes significant advantage of the unrest. Magi's were the priest counselors of the Medes and Persians. Back to the text. King Darius says, "Afterwards there was a certain man, a Magian, Gaumata by name, who raised a rebellion in Paishiavada, in a mountain called Arachadris. On the 14th day of the month Vyaksana did he rebel. He lied to the people, saying, 'I am Smerdis, the son of Cyrus, the brother of Cambyses.' Then were all the people in revolt, and from Cambyses they went over unto him, both Persia and Media and the other provinces. He seized the kingdom. On the 9th day of the month Garmapada, he seized the kingdom. Afterwards, Cambyses died of natural causes." So we have a magi, Gaumata, pretending to be Smerdis, and once Cambyses is dead, ruling the Persian Empire without contest. Without contest, aside for those few righteous people who would set things right. And with that, particularly my usage of the word righteous, I want to again just remind ourselves that we're reading what Darius wants us to think. And while it might be true, it also may well not be, and there's no question that this narrative is a justificatory one for the legitimacy of Darius's kingdom, who from the people's perspective, if you trust Darius's account of their perspective, may well have been of the mind that they were being legitimately ruled by the son of Cyrus the Great. So back to Darius's account, Cambyses is dead and Gaumata, feigning to be Smerdis, rules the kingdom. The inscription continues. King Darius says, "The kingdom of which Gaumata, the Magian, dispossessed Cambyses, had always belonged to our dynasty. After that Gaumata, the Magian, had dispossessed Cambyses of Persia and Media and of the other provinces, he did according to his will. He became king." Now the narrative is going to turn to how Darius himself rose up. King Darius says, "There was no man, either Persian or Mede, or of our own dynasty, who took the kingdom from Gaumata the Magian. The people feared him exceedingly, for he slew many who had known the real Smerdis. For this reason did he slay them, that they may not know that I am not Smerdis, the son of Cyrus. There was none who dared to act against Gaumata the Magian until I came. Then I prayed to Ahura Mazda, Ahura Mazda brought me help. On the 10th day of the month Bhagayadis, I, with a few men, slew that Gaumata, the Magian, and the chief men who were his followers. At the stronghold called Sikayavatis, in the district called Nisaya, in Media, I slew him. I dispossessed him of the kingdom. By the grace of Ahura Mazda, I became king. Ahura Mazda granted me the kingdom. And there you have it. Darius, with some aid, killed the pretender and restored the true royal lineage. You can see in the imagery at Bisitun, Darius crushing the false king Gaumata underfoot. After relaying the rise of Darius, the inscription continues with accounts of rebellions Darius then faced and put down. But before considering the revolts he faced as he began his rule, our concern for the moment is the story of his ascent to power. And there are a number of subsequent takes on the exact story of Darius coming to power, most notably that of Herodotus. According to Herodotus, Cambyses' brother, Smerdis, was brought with Cambyses to Egypt and only then sent back by Cambyses in a fit of jealousy. After dreaming of Smerdis on the throne, Cambyses had Smerdis killed secretly. Herodotus then has it that the brother of a Magi who knew about Smerdis' murder was both named Smerdis and looked exactly like Smerdis, and he was put on the throne. 7 nobles got together after Smerdis, but not the real Smerdis, had ruled for 7 months, and they killed him. And while Darius was one of those 7 nobles, the way Herodotus has it is that it was only afterward that Darius gained the throne through tricking the nobles. The historian Ctesias, a Greek who lived under Persian rule and served as physician to the Persian king Artaxerxes II, leaves us another account. He describes how the person sent by Cambyses to murder Smerdis was instructed by Cambyses to impersonate Smerdis as well. It's from Ctesias, incidentally, that the earliest historical mention of the Bisitun inscription was made, when he mentioned its existence around 400 BC. Further, documentary evidence from Babylon shows that a Smerdis, the real Smerdis or not, had started ruling in April 522 BC, months before the date given by Darius for Smerdis' assumption of the throne, as well as being months before Cambyses' death. To what extent Darius made up the story of Gaumata and the fake Smerdis is up for debate, and numerous alternatives which paint Darius in a far darker light remain possible. Darius most certainly did come to power and established a somewhat new bloodline, and wasn't shy about what he thought of the former king Smerdis. After the murder of Smerdis, Darius was king, sort of. Darius now describes numerous rebellions breaking out, starting out with Asina of Elam and Nidintu-Bel of Babylonia. After seeing to the execution of Asina, Darius headed for Babylonia, in the words of the Bisitun inscription, "Then I marched against that Nidintu-Bel who called himself Nebuchadnezzar. The army of Nidintu-Bel held the Tigris. There it took its stand, and on account of the waters, the river was unfordable. Thereupon I supported my army on inflated skins. Others I made dromedary-born. For the rest I brought horses." After having his army cross the Tigris, Darius describes 2 battles in December of 522 BC. First, "By the grace of Ahura Mazda we crossed the Tigris. Then did I utterly overthrow that host of Nidintu-Bel. On the 26th day of the month Achaemenid, we joined battle." This is followed with, "After that I marched against Babylon, but before I reached Babylon, that Nidintu-Bel who called himself Nebuchadnezzar came with a host and offered battle at a city called Zazana on the Euphrates. Then we joined battle. Ahura Mazda brought me help. By the grace of Ahura Mazda did I utterly overthrow the host of Nidintu-Bel. The enemy fled into the water carried them away. On the 2nd day of the month Anamaka, we joined battle." Unquote. Nidintu-Bel retreated, and Darius marched on and took Babylon, and, quote, "Then I slew that Nidintu-Bel in Babylon." Unquote. After the successful ending of the Elamite and Babylonian revolts, the fever of rebellion only spread, and the inscription reads, "While I was in Babylon, these provinces revolted from me. Persia, Elam, Media, Assyria, and on." After seeing to the putting down of numerous rebellions, a second Babylonian uprising occurred. quote, "A certain man named Araka, an Armenian, son of Haldita, rebelled in Babylon, at a place called Dubala. He lied unto the people, saying, I am Nebuchadnezzar, the son of Nabonidus." Unquote. This rebellion ended with the seizing of Araka and a decree from Darius, quote, "Let that Araka and the men who were his chief followers be crucified in Babylon." Unquote. As we shift towards the end part of the inscription, the conversation becomes more ethically minded, and we see more clearly a clear fixation on the line between truth and falsehood that conjures up questions about the place of Zoroastrianism at this juncture of Persian history. Zoroastrianism is allegedly based around the teachings of a man named Zoroaster, who may have lived around 1000 BC, and the division of truth and order against lies and chaos plays a primary role. Darius has already referred to the lie and instances of specific lies. And now he summarizes his story and describes his conquests, and with each rebel claimant, Darius has written that they, quote, lied saying, unquote, and then the individual kingship claim is made. For example, quote, "One was named Gaumata, the Magian. He lied, saying, I am Smerdis, the son of Cyrus. He made Persia to revolt," unquote. And, quote, "Another was named Frada, of Margiana. He lied, saying, I am king of Margiana. He made Margiana to revolt." A couple of lines later reads, quote, "King Darius says, as to these provinces which revolted, lies made them revolt, so that they deceived the people," unquote. This is followed by a message to future kings, quote, "King Darius says, you who shall be king hereafter, protect yourself vigorously from lies. Punish the liars well, if thus you shall think, may my country be secure," unquote. Darius then affirms the truth of his statement and says even further that, quote, "By the grace of Ahura Mazda, I did much more, which is not graven in this inscription. On this account it has not been inscribed, lest he who shall read this inscription hereafter should then hold that which has been done by me to be excessive, and not believe it, and takes it to be lies," unquote. Beyond not lying, Darius then declares his righteousness more broadly, giving us a just slightly wider window into his professed values and the idea of what kind of king would find favor in the eyes of Ahura Mazda. Quote, "King Darius says, on this account Ahura Mazda brought me help, and all the other gods, all that there are, because I was not wicked, nor was I a liar, nor was I a despot, neither I nor any of my family. I have ruled according to righteousness. Neither to the weak nor to the powerful did I do wrong. Whosoever held my house, him I favored. He who was hostile, him I destroyed," unquote. Darius closed off his early reign consolidation of his power with visits to Egypt and Lydia in 519 BC. While neither of these places had rebelled proper, Darius quieted the restive populations. Over the coming years, he engaged in a couple of expansionary campaigns, most notably conquering Lydia, as well as making headway into Pakistan and India and conquering there. But the days of Darius himself going out to battles, rather than ordering them from afar, would come to an end. The last campaign he himself went out for was against the Scythians in 513 BC. While some quelling of the Scythian nuisance was brought about and Thrace was brought into the Persian Empire, the expedition itself wasn't the success it set out to be, thanks to Scythian disinterest in a direct battle and a preference for avoiding Darius's army in open battle, and they spent their time moving across the land where Darius's army wasn't, as well as conducting small-scale raids against those who were away from the bulk of the soldiers and engaging in small-scale skirmishes. In the end, after being coaxed into a vulnerable state, Darius and the troops made their way back, and for the way back, they were the ones seeking to avoid confrontation. From after the Scythian experience onward, Darius would refrain from personally joining his army and instead would run military affairs from afar, taking advantage of the Great Persian messenger system. The ability Darius had to back up from direct involvement in his wars was aided in no small part by the ease of travel in the empire. The Persian Empire had inherited certain road systems, most notably that of the Neo-Assyrians, and they expanded on them. Their ability to send messages through swift traveling couriers was praised by Herodotus in terms very similar to the credo of the modern United States Postal Service. Herodotus writes, quote, "Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds." Unquote. Some areas of the empire could rely heavily on waterways such as the Tigris and Euphrates of Mesopotamia, the Indus River of Pakistan and India, and the Nile in Egypt. As for the last of those, the Nile, Darius had completed a canal leading from the delta to the Red Sea that had been started by an Egyptian pharaoh. Other steps at improving the efficiency and security of the empire came through Darius's likely clarifying the not well-defined boundaries of the various provinces or satrapies of the empire. Beyond boundary determining, Darius shifted the tributary responsibilities of the satraps, the governors of the provinces, to providing specific amounts of tribute in contrast to the more open-ended, voluntary gift approach of Cyrus and Cambyses. Further, while coins had been introduced to the Persian Empire under Cyrus with the conquest of the coin-producing Lydia, Darius introduced the first Persian coinage, the gold daric and the silver siglos. Another accomplishment of Darius were his building projects, including the establishing of a new capital, Persepolis, bringing the total amount of Persian capitals to 5, Cyrus's Pasargadae, Darius's Persepolis, and then Ecbatana, Babylon, and Susa. In the last of those, Susa, Darius had a temple complex built. As we crossed the turn of the century, Darius had been king for some 22 years and had ruled over a relatively under-control Persian Empire for 19 years, but on the other side of 500 BC, another rebellion awaited. In 499 BC, Persia faced a rebellion by the Ionian Greeks. At this time, the different cities of Ionia were ruled by individual strongmen, and the satrap they reported to was the one at Sardis, Artaphernes, half-brother of Darius himself. The revolt was encouraged by the man left in charge of Miletus at the moment, Aristagoras. Aristagoras then turned to the Greek powers further west. Sparta spurned him, but Athens, who was under unwelcome pressure by Artaphernes to reinstate their former ruler Hippias to his place in charge, found the anti-Persian revolt more attractive, and they sent help. Forces from Athens, along with some from the nearby to the north Eretria, joined up with the Ionians in 498, and they all marched on Sardis, the political capital of the satrapy the Ionians found themselves in. They caused destruction, but failed to take Sardis and fell back before the Persians chased them down and defeated them in battle. This loss at Ephesus soured the Athenian and Eretrian appetite for the war, and they headed back across the Aegean from whence they came. But over the coming year, others, north and south of Ionia, joined the revolt. Persia then arranged a three-headed counterattack, and further chaos ensued with the revolt even further south by Cyprus, who revolted in 497 and called on Ionia for aid. Ionia came to their aid on the sea, but left them to their own devices on land, and Cyprus soon lost. Back up north in the rebellion's heartland, the Persians saw much success against the rebels, and the initial instigator, Aristagoras, fled. This final period of the revolt culminated with the Battle of Lade, a naval battle between the Ionians and Persians, and Persia's decisive victory all but ended the revolt, though cleanup was needed in the aftermath, and after a siege on Miletus was sacked in 494 BC and had some of its citizens deported. After some further cleanup up and down the coast, the end of 493 BC left a couple of nagging issues around. For one, Thrace appears to have required resubjugation after all the chaos of nearby rebellion. And second, at the beginning of all this, Athenians and Eretrians had joined on the attack and destruction at Sardis, and Darius hadn't forgotten. Darius sent Mardonius, an aristocrat birthed by Darius' sister and married to Darius' daughter, along with an army to Thrace and northern Greece in 492 BC. And though wounded already in Thrace, Mardonius ended up bringing into the Persian Empire the farther west city of Macedon, whose king Alexander's descendant Alexander would later come to rule a rather large empire. 490 BC saw another Persian campaign into Greece, this time by sea, and on one of their boats sat Hippias, Athens' former tyrant, whom they had refused to reinstate in the face of Persian request. This time, Persia wasn't asking. A Persian force numbering at most 15,000 made their way over and conquered some islands along the way. By the mainland, they first focused in on Eretria, who had sent 5 ships to help Ionia. Eretria's citizens locked themselves behind their city walls, and after a betrayal by some citizens, the Persians found themselves inside the city and burning it. Now they moved on to the plain of Marathon, northwest of Athens, where 10,000 Athenians came to meet them. A further 600 men from Plataea joined the Athenians as well. A number of days passed before any serious activity got going as the Greeks waited on the southern end of the Marathon plain, until one morning the Greeks got up and sprinted across the plain, met a determined wall of Persians, and with time the right and left sides of the Persian forces started giving way, while the center pushed its way forward, chasing their enemies south, and finding themselves even more threatened. With Greeks now appearing, fierce battle ensued until the Persian force broke and fled for their ships, and those that could make it safely offshore escaped with memories that may well have haunted them for the rest of their lives. Persia would be back again, but not in the life of Darius, whose life came to an end in October of 486 BC, and he was succeeded by his son and chosen successor, Xerxes. Darius's problems became Xerxes' problems now, and a new problem had emerged in the last year of Darius's life. Egypt rebelled. But those problems are for another day. Now, all that's left for us is for Darius to die. Go, Darius, into that sweet night, O most powerful human of your time, enter the realm of unbeing.